We're not going to be too long, but I do want to make sure you all are aware as to the conditions and the structure of the midterm, et cetera. But before we get started on midterm information, I'd like to review the assignment and quiz for Module 8. There were some interesting struggles that I hadn't seen before in both the assignment, and some of it I will take the onus of that because a couple of the questions were curiously interesting. I'll just phrase it that way. So here, let me share my screen here. All right. Can you all see my little split screen with the SQL developer and the questions? All right. We're going to start with number one. Number one asked us to write a query that will return. Well, let's zoom in a little bit. Both the maximum and minimum average salary. Yeah, I'll tell you, whenever you have, these nested functions, it's really, they may be, so the interpretation may be done many different ways. So generally, I will accept most interpretations as long as they make sense. Maximum, minimum, average. What does that mean? But basically, you're wanting the highest and the lowest average. But then we're going to group it. So the grouping function with these grouping scenarios always seems to be a challenge. So the best query, or the winning query, or probably the easiest one to do, is just select, and I did the round because if you don't round, you get all the digits, max average salary, and then min average salary. And then you have to have the group by department because that will group it by department. So you're wondering, does this even make sense? So the average, the average, the highest average of department is this value. The lowest average of department is the 3,500. So yeah, so when you run that, yeah, you get 19,000. And can you run that so you can see which departments were included? Well, yeah, but you can do that. But this, yeah, I would argue that that's a really hard query or even a challenge to understand, and would even disagree if you would argue that. So, but those are the two values that I was looking for. And then number two, before I show the query, write a query that will return the average of the maximum salaries. So the average of the maximum salaries is still one value. You're going to max all the salaries and then take the average of the max salaries. Once again, it's an interesting way to phrase that, but all you need to do is average max salaries and then group it by departments just to make sure you receive or you obtain that single value. And the number I was looking for, and I did have a couple of iterations of that, but I accepted all because these group by and grouping functions are a little bit interesting to interpret. So, and you probably won't run into a scenario where you would need to have a result something like that, the maximum average. I don't really type into accounting. I could be mistaken by referencing this way, but once again, I was very lenient with some of these results with this assignment. All right, number three, within the employee table, each manager ID is the manager of one or more employees who each have a job ID and earn a salary. Duh. For each manager, what is the total salary earned by all employees? Oops. What's the rest of that? It's a grouping set. Zoom out. I have to download that. Well, anyway. Oh, here it is down here. All of the employees within each job ID. So write a query to display manager ID, job ID, and total salary. Include in the result the subtotal salary of each manager and grand total. So this is it's a roll-up scenario, right? So our query is select manager ID, job ID, sum salary, and I use an alias from employees, group by roll-up, manager ID, job ID. And when you run that, and we kind of ran this before, but yes, you get this grand total, the subtotals of each department, or each job ID, excuse me. So that's how that was interpreted. And I think everyone did pretty well on the roll-up. Number 4, write one query to return employee ID, job ID, hire date, and department ID of all employees, and a second query listing employee ID, job ID, start date, and department ID from the job history table, and combine the results as one single output. Make sure you suppress duplicates. So the key there is a union. So essentially you're reading a union from the employees table and the job history table. So hire date, and I use hire date. I think most of you did hire date and start date, which was fine, as long as you have a union, removing any duplicates. Okay. Number 5, list all employees who have not changed job even once. So this one was very tricky because you can't simply use a minus. Well, I chose Nicole's here. I chose Nicole's result because she actually matched a query without using a set operator, which was fine because it returned the correct response. So normally you would, well, according to our instructions, you would write this query using the set operator minus the job history table, but that, and we'll go ahead and write that. I won't show you Nicole's answer. Yes, Nicole, I'm giving you credit because you're the only one that actually, well, I think you're the only one that actually received an accurate result. So we're looking for all employers who have not changed jobs. So you would think you could run, select, job ID. Now we'll do employee ID and job ID from employees. And then we would want to do a minus, right? Select, or maybe I'm doing this backwards. Will we want to do a minus on the job history table, or no, that wouldn't make any sense. We reverse it. So if we run this, thinking that it will subtract, well, without thinking too much, you would think that anyone in the job history table has changed jobs at least once. So this minus query should satisfy the requirements here, who have not changed jobs at least once. And it says such employees are, and so you're saying all employees that are found in the job history table are the ones that changed jobs at least once. But I think when I ran this, it still returns all employees. Oh, actually, this does work. Well, let's see who these employees are. Well, one is King. Well, we have some. Well, let me ask you all this. Do we think this query returned accurate information? And we have last name in the, we don't have last name. We don't have last name in the job history table, do we? So what do we need to do here? Because we still have to match because this is a set operator. We do a 2 char null here. What do y'all think? Everyone's being very quiet. Can you all hear me still? So since the columns have to match, right? So let's run this query. All right, so we're saying all of these employees did not, oh, I guess that does work. No. Oh. It doesn't work when you add the name, because you see here, I guess this is what I was running into. If you add the last name to char null, it returns all the employees, right? Because we only have 20 employees in our little schema. So this is saying, so all of these employees did not change jobs at least once, right? All right. So what I did first, I took the last name out of that. And if I run that, then we get the 18 employees that have not changed jobs. So, and there's a reason for it. When you add that minus to char null, then you're not actually, at least from thinking about this, you're not actually subtracting all the employees that have changed their jobs. So it should only be 18. Actually, I think it's only 15. But anyway, so the correct answer, if anyone wants to chime in. So Nicole, since I'm using your query, because you use a subquery, which is what we're going to go into next week in module 9, you use a subquery where employee ID is not in the employee ID of the job history table. I think that is actually the most accurate query for this, even though we haven't covered subqueries. Because if you run that, you get the 15 employees, and 15, I'm pretty sure 15 is the correct answer. So this one was very, very confusing. This was number 5. And these are all the employees in our database table that have not changed jobs. And if you look at the job history table, you'll see that these employees are not in there. We could do a join and check it and all that, but I gave everyone credit for that one because it was, the minus was supposed to work and the minus really does not work. So, any questions or comments about that? Everyone's so quiet. No. Nope. Everyone's saying no. All right. And then the last one was just a union all from the employees. And because using the union operator with write a query that displays employee ID, job ID salary of all present and past employees, which means if it's past employees, then you want to use the job history table and a union all. If salary is not found, then just display a 0. And you can write this simply this way, because the data types, that's a number, this is a number. So that is fine to just write it with the 0, and this will return all employees. And you can use name anyway, but that, once again, there's quite a few iterations. If you answered the query in one way or not, I was fine with it. So, and well, thanks, Diana. All right. Okay, so let me share again. Let's move from that. Oh, wait, before I share again, I did want to go over the quiz, but I'm just going to go over the questions. And we'll use the same model. here, because there was quite a disparity of responses to this to the quiz. I'm going to go ahead and open it so I don't show any of the grades. That would be not right. All right. And you're all going to have to help me out here. So the first question, number one, if you want to include subtotals and grand totals for all columns mentioned in the group by clause, you should use which of the following extensions, and it was cube, group by, all columns, and it's roll up. I'm not sure why most of you or some of you chose cube. Roll up is always the response. Be looking at subtotals and grand totals. Cube, remember, that's kind of a cross-sectional way of looking at it. So, all right, examine the following query. Select department head, department ID, manager ID, job ID, sum salary from employees, group by grouping sets. And so which grouping set of the choices? And it was group by grouping set, department ID, salary, department ID, job ID, department ID, manager ID. And we had this one before. And I would suggest if you ever have a query like this, the best thing to do is just copy the query itself into the developer and see if it runs and see if it satisfies the requirement. Another quiz question, that one was missed quite a lot. So yeah, a little confusing, but I mean, if you thought about what we learned and went through some of the practice, that would make a little more sense. The products table contains these columns, and remember, right? We did. Excuse me. We don't have a products table, so this is a in our database, but as product ID number, product name, product category, a varchar, product price, a number, product quantity. You need to identify the minimum product price in each product category. Which query could be used to accomplish this? And actually, most people did pretty well in this one. So select product category, minimum, and you want to group by product category. And that was the key for that query. Please reference the employees table. You want to create a report that includes each employee's last name, employee identification number, date of hire, salary. The report should include only those employees who have been with the company for more than 1 year and whose salary exceeds 40,000. And the correct answer was select employee ID, last name, hire date, salary from employees where salary is greater than 40,000, and cis hire date is basically over a year, or not more, or the requirement is that only those employees who have been with the company for more than 1 year. So greater cis hire date divided by 65 greater than 1, which means they've been there more than 1 year. That looks like an odd query. Maybe it's one of these ones where outside of the scope of this particular topic, but let's take a look and see what this produces. And it's always good to see if these queries run in a SQL query or SQL developer. I can get this running. All right, so if you run this query in the developer, oh, that returned no results. Maybe that's why this one was kind of a problem. Any comments on that question? Because if you missed that question, I didn't even check that. I just assumed. Let's see, who got that question correct? I may have to go back and regrade this. That's producing the results. Nothing.
I have a comment about this question.
Go ahead, Diana.
This question threw me off at first, but I actually have it since the beginning of class. I printed out the tables and I looked at it, and there was no one that met those requirements. And I ran a test query with the 40,000 lowered to like, I don't know, whatever, a little less than whatever King makes, and it brought him up. And I'm like, okay, it's working. It's just a tricky question because it yields no results.
So maybe I did that on purpose. So yeah, there's no one that matches those criteria. But wait, I mean, did you try all of the queries, Diana?
No.
Now, let's just take a minute to do that. Yeah, I may have to give everyone credit for that.
Well, some of the answers I think didn't have what it required. It says like have a query with like employee ID, last name, hire date. And so I like narrowed it down based on what was in the first select statement.
Got it. Yeah, and I think none of the queries return results. I think that's what I thought I was going to change that criteria. I may give because I think most people missed that question. All right, let's move on. It wasn't intended to be a tricky question, but thank you, Diana, for chiming in. So what would the following query do? Select job ID count. So what do we do with this query? It's basically giving us the number of employees in those particular jobs, which was each job ID and the number of employees. I think everyone did pretty good on that one. Evaluate this query, select count employee, department ID from employees, group by department ID. You only want to include employees who earn more than 15,000. Which clause, which where clause? Having, so it was having, or is the where before the group. That was a little tricky, but yes, it was the where salary is greater than 15,000, and then grouping by department ID. Yeah, that one was a little tricky too. And then the last one was set operator. Which of the following correct set operators? Choose two. So it's union minus union all intersect. All right. Enough of that. Okay, so yeah, the quiz was a little questionable as far as the results, so I was a little bit concerned, but let's see. Valerie said I checked it by doing 400 instead. Okay. Well, we worked our way through it. If I may go back and give everyone credit for that one question, because it was mostly annoying. I apologize. All right, switching gears a little bit. Deep breath. This is midterm week. I want to review the criteria first before we go into what you need to know, what you need to study. I want to make sure before we even get started, this has everyone downloaded and tested, because you need to submit this before Friday as well, or before Wednesday, excuse me. This is a 3-point assignment testing the respondent's lockdown browser. It's a lockdown browser, yes. Once you open it, you can't open up any apps. on your computer. If you do, then basically it gives you a 0 and you can't complete the midterm. All right. So please click on, and we are gonna watch the little video. It's just a 3-4 minute video that talks about the lockdown browser. Basically, it has a link in here to download. Did everyone, or let me ask, give me a thumbs up if you download it or you're planning to download the Respondus lockdown browser. All right, please do that. That is a part of the assignment because you need that for the midterm. The midterm will not open unless you have that browser downloaded on your system. So let's watch this little video. And
if you're watching this, you're probably required to use Respondus Lockdown Browser for an online exam. Lockdown Browser is a different kind of browser. While taking an exam, you can't print, use other applications, visit other websites, you can't even search the internet for answers. I know, it takes all the fun out of online tests. But here's the good thing. Your classmates can't do those things either, so it's just your brain against their brain. A level playing field. Your instructor will provide a link for downloading and installing Lockdown Browser. When you start it, Lockdown Browser might warn you that certain applications have to be shut down before you continue, like screen capture programs, instant messaging, Skype, pretty much anything that lets you communicate with the outside world. You can close those applications yourself or let Lockdown Browser do it for you. The browser will then go to the login page for your online course. Log in like you normally do and locate the exam that requires Lockdown Browser. Remember, after the exam starts, you won't be able to do other things on your computer until you finish the exam. When you're done, just exit Lockdown Browser and you'll be all set. Your instructor might also require you to use a webcam with Lockdown Browser. This part is sometimes called Respondus Monitor, but just think of it as a webcam for Lockdown Browser. The nice thing about the webcam feature is that it lets you take exams from the comfort of your own home, or from the other side of the world. Plus, you can take exams at any time of the day or night. The webcam will record what happens during the exam, and the instructor can review it afterward. So, if an exam requires you to use Lockdown Browser and a webcam, just start Lockdown Browser and locate the exam. Before the exam starts, you'll be guided through a check to make sure your webcam is running properly. Additional steps might also be required by your instructor, such as showing your ID or taking.
okay, I'm going to move from the rest of the video because I am not going to require you to use a webcam. We're not going to monitor your test taking using the webcam and monitor Respondus Monitor. But the Respondus Lockdown Browser is required. All right. And yes, you need to download and test it. And yes, as long as you download and test it, don't worry about getting all the questions right and this little testing quiz. And yes, it is a little quiz. If I remember correctly, it's just 3 questions. Which operator is used to compare a value? Yeah, it's basically the test Respondus. So when you start the quiz, it will also require Respondus, but basically I'll give you 3 points. You don't necessarily have to get all the right answers, but it does give you an idea how everything will get locked down once you start the quiz. Okay, so essentially, and you have to submit it and all that. So make sure you download Respondus. You do this testing. As a matter of fact, if you don't test the Respondus Lockdown Browser, I can't allow you to take the midterm. Basically, I will block you from taking the midterm. So this is due by Wednesday. Testing Respondus. So get that out of the way. And so it's not a problem. All right. Let me go back before I actually talk about the midterm. What's entailed? You do have a midterm study guide. Let me go through this. It's modules 1 through 8. And I would suggest reviewing all of these components, specifically the ones that are bolded, primary key, foreign key, projection, used to select columns, selection used to select rows. Yes, please know the difference there. Column aliases. What is the command you would use to display the structure of a table? The describe or DESC, distinct, module 2, between, and, in, like, with the percent where it's located and the underscore is null, is not null. Logical operators. So I am focusing on the items in bold, but don't forget about the other items as well. I think there's a couple of scenarios where you do have some questions centered around some of the other items. Aliases, remember, if it's a space, has to be surrounded by double quotes. Order by, remember, order by has to be the last item. The execution order in a select statement, from where select to order by. Order by is always last. Module 4, and I'm buzzing through these, so hopefully you will all go back and review these before you actually attempt to take the midterm. Concat, substring length, all of those character manipulation functions, number functions, round, trunc, and mod. Sysdate, what does sysdate mean? All of the conversion functions, data types, tochar, and formatting. The null functions, NVL, NVL2, null if, and coalesce. And then module 6, all of the joins. Joins, please make sure you're comfortable with what a join is, what a self join is, what a left outer, right outer, what an actual join is, what's a natural join, what's a cross join, etc. They're not any of them are bold, but please review the joins. Module 7, the group functions. Yeah, this is more recent, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Average, count, max, min, sum. There will not be any standard deviation or any of those statistical type questions. Count expression, count distinct expression. And then module 8, your set operators, union, all intersect, and minus. Please review the recordings and the lectures. I would even review some of the test queries. But I would suggest downloading this page and printing it out if you can, or finding a way that you can access this. Even I would write notes on it. That's what I would suggest. There's not going to be anyone that'll swoop in and say you can't use your notes or your textbook or your phone for that matter. But be very, very careful, because we're not monitoring your activities while you're taking the exam. We're just monitoring your computer, hence the Respondus Lockdown browser. And that Respondus Lockdown browser is pretty, if you do something that's even questionable, it'll lock you out. So please do not do that. All right, so that's the kind of the study guide. And just to let you know, I reviewed the exam thoroughly, and there's not really anything on the exam that's outside of this study guide. And specifically, everything in bold is subject to be a part of the questions. And who knows, those 3 questions in the testing, they may even be on the test. So make sure you go through the Respondus Lockdown browser tests, and then the actual exam. I'm just going to preview it to show you that there's 50 questions. All right, I'll show you the number of questions. Once you open it, and please make a note of this, and I will explain when it's available, when it ends. You will have 90 minutes to complete it. You cannot close it and reopen it. Once you close it, basically it stops, and if you don't submit it, then in essence, you're subjecting yourself to possibly getting a 0. Don't do that. I mean, just go through each question. I would, since it's only 90 minutes, that's about, if you do the math, 50 questions, that's less than 2 minutes a question. I know I don't like saying this, but you do have to kind of diligently and expeditiously go through the questions. Some of them are easy. Like this question 1, select statements are used for, it should take you, less than, a few seconds to answer that question. And so what's the answer to that? To give you this one, retrieving data from a database. So there, you got one question, 1 of the 50. You only have 49 more to do. Okay, let's do 2, since you're probably wanting me to. What is the most widely used database management system? That is relational. So there, 2 questions. And it's like that. A lot of them are, well, they're all multiple choice. A lot of them are just word, some of them are queries. So you will have to rely on your knowledge to understand how queries run and what you're expecting. Test taking 101, please make sure you read the question carefully. I know it seems like it's not enough time, but actually the amount of time, the 1.75 minutes or whatever, there's plenty of time to read through the questions and read through each of the answers. And it's like for the most part, what I've discovered with the midterm and the final, when you get to that, it's a lot of questions. After like 30 questions, you're almost burnt out, but you have to keep going. Because 50 questions at one point. Now, most of the students say, well, yeah, I can get through about 30 of them, and then all of a sudden I'm just way too tired. So I suggest just trudge through it. Get as many as you can get done as possible. And most of the questions will go by pretty rapidly. And you may have to spend a couple minutes on a couple questions, or 3 or 4, but most of the questions will go pretty fast as far as the responses. All right. Are there any free written response queries? Diana asked that question. No. Free written, which means you get to choose basically. Well, when you say free written, do you have to actually write the query? You'll have to read the query and understand and expect what the results are. But, well, I think I always take a look at the last question. Let's take a look at the last question. All right. You need to join the employees table and the schedules table, but the 2 tables do not have any corresponding columns. Which join will be created? And this one is kind of tricky because you have to know what an equijoin is. Does anyone remember what an equijoin is? Without me telling you. No responses. I get crickets. What is an equijoin? Someone? Nothing. Well, there you go. I'll have you. No, it's okay. It is something we covered way back in week 1. But I'm going to have you ponder over that. That's the last question. Which of the following are set operators? Choose all that apply. So this one should be easy, right? Union minus intersect, union all. So you get a lot of questions like that. So there, I've given you 3, but please, and that's why the burnout factor is high, because you have to read the questions, and after a while, you'll probably get tired of reading. They're basically worded questions. Some do have queries, some do have results, And you have to determine the best answer. All right, so the criteria around the midterm, it will open. You have plenty of time. It won't open until Thursday. So the testing respondents browser is due Wednesday. Get that done. The midterm will open Thursday at 8, Thursday morning at 8, and you have until Sunday at midnight. Once again, it's not an open and close scenario, not a continuation. Once you open the exam, you have 90 minutes, an hour and a half to complete all 50 questions. Does everyone understand that? No. And it's not, I know Diane gave me the grimacing face. It's really not as bad as you think. It's just long. I know many of the students feel like it's too long, but it just, after a while, you're like, even I, after, reading through 40 questions, you can't believe there's 10 more. But they're not hard. It's just getting through all 50 questions. And this was one of the kind of the baseline requirements of a midterm. So I would recommend go trick-or-treating with your children or by yourself, get a lot of candy, come home on Saturday morning and start the quiz with all that sugar. Then you'll be able to buzz right through without any problems there. This is the first year we've had the midterm and Halloween coincide with each other. So, all right. Any concerns, questions, comments? And that's all you have to do this week. It's the only thing this week is the midterm. Nothing else, no assignments. You don't have to worry about trudging through. Just have to remember everything that you learned. There's some comments in the chat. Does lockdown browser ever crash? As far as I know, Diane, it has not crashed on me in, 10 years. So, but never say never when it comes to technology. Just use all your positive energy. But it's pretty basic. The application behind it is pretty basic. I mean, if you know anything about operating systems, it's easy to lock down or create a lockdown scenario for other applications. And usually if there's a crash, it's not the browser, it's your operating system or your environment. That's why you're told to pretty much shut everything else down, like your mail service or any other browsers, because it will shut it down for you. So with that premise, it's a basic. I downloaded it in the past for other classes and we ended up not using it, but it was very laggy. Well, okay. What we were told when I did open it, it's supposed to be better now. I've only used it myself a couple times before, and if you follow all the requirements usually, and it'll run okay. I'll just put it at that point. I haven't heard of anyone expressing any major concerns about the respondus. And I know it's still used quite a bit at most institutions. So it's still the most, I don't think there's another browser out there that will do what the respondus does. Maybe in the future we'll get away from using it, but for now it is a requirement for CGCC on exams in the online environment because it does help. You're welcome. Any other questions or concerns about the midterm? All right, just a quick reminder. I'll just share my screen once again. The midterm, the test and respondents lockdown browser scenario, little quiz, 3-question quiz, 3-question quiz is due on Wednesday. The midterm opens Thursday morning, 8 a.m. And it stays open until Sunday at midnight. But remember, once you start the midterm, you must go through all 50 questions. Well, you can, if you're very confident, you can get up and have a cup of coffee or stretch a little bit, but get back into it, finish the questions, get it done, and you're set. All right. Last chance, any questions? And I've actually given you 3 of the answers, so yeah, you really only have 47 questions to go. And that's almost 2 minutes a question. That's a lot of time. Okay. All right. So you're all ready, right? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Ready to take the midterm. All right. So it won't be as bad as you're thinking. Just get through it, and we move right into subqueries next week. And please have a happy Halloween. Don't even worry about the midterm until after the festivities on Friday. And yeah, don't eat too much candy. All right. If there's no more questions, nothing in the chat. Happy testing, and I will see you all. Thanks, Diane. Where'd you find that pumpkin? Is that in the reactions?
Yep, just has all the regular emojis in there.
All right. All right. Wow. There's a pumpkin in there?
Yep.
That's too much work.
Just search for it.
I typed in pumpkin. I don't see it.
You know what? I typed in Halloween.
Oh, see
I
that?
can't get jack-o'-lantern.
Oh, there it is. Okay, here we go. So everyone say happy Halloween with their pumpkin. Jack-o'-lantern. All right, everyone. Thank you. Take care and happy testing.
Bye.